Hello. Living with separation anxiety drains you in many ways. You get neighbor complaints from all the barking and howling. You're, while at work, you're constantly checking the surveillance camera to see what your dog is up to instead of focusing on the work. You feel misunderstood. You even feel judged, like sometimes people might ask you, what you're doing wrong, and of course you're not doing anything wrong. Um, you end up having no social life because you feel like a prisoner in your own home. You know that every time you leave, your dog panics, so your heart goes out to them because they panic, but you also avoid leaving them alone as much as possible precisely to avoid them barking and howling and destroying. So basically, your life revolves around your dog's anxiety. And so eventually, you end up asking yourself, out of despair, very often, which is understandable, you end up asking yourself, how long does it take to fix separation anxiety? And I wish I could sugarcoat it and tell you that it will take a couple of weeks, but I have to be quite honest with you and tell you that it depends. First of all, separation anxiety isn't something that is fixed because that implies that your dog is broken, and your dog isn't broken. Your dog doesn't need fixing. Your dog has a problem, and problems are solved. So solving separation anxiety depends on quite a few factors. I'm going to mention the most common ones here, and totally free of judgment. Please believe me when I say that I totally understand what you feel, because I've been a professional dog behavior consultant for over 20 years, and I've worked with a lot of dogs with separation anxiety, and I know exactly how much the dog suffers, but I also know how much the human parent suffers. So what I'm going to say is totally free of judgment, okay? So solving separation anxiety depends on how severe it is. If it's mild, and if your dog has started showing symptoms recently, and if you took action to start helping him, then it's going to take much less than if the problem is quite severe. And when it's severe, very often aids such as calming sprays and music and toys might not help, might not be effective at all because the anxiety is too severe. And the only thing that will help besides behavior modification would be medication. And then many of us actually resist the idea of giving our dogs medication. And so this can also, if your dog's anxiety is severe and you're not wanting to give him any medication, that can slow the process down quite a lot. You may even come to a stage where progress stalls because his brain can't learn without the anxiety coming down a bit. Another thing that depends on how fast, or another thing that contributes to how fast or how slow solving separation anxiety is the effectiveness of the plan that you're following. Now, I know that it's easy for us to look for solutions on the internet, and very often we'll take a tip here and a tip there and apply this one tip or two or three tips. And that's not really a plan. When it comes to solving separation anxiety, you need a step-by-step progressive plan that starts with a foundation where your dog learns to feel safe at home when you're not there, where you do things that lower his baseline anxiety level, and then where you actually start working on real absences. But it's something that builds on. It has to be step by step. So if the plan you're following isn't effective, then separation anxiety will take much longer to be solved, and it might not even get solved at all. It's like if you want to get to a certain city and you insist on driving in the opposite direction, well, you can drive for as long as you like, and you're never going to get to your destination. Another thing that's important is how consistent you are in applying the steps that you learn in that plan. Because I know that very often, especially when we eventually are driven by despair or we feel helpless, because solving separation anxiety isn't something that just gets better and better and better. Your dog will have good days, bad days, good days, bad days. Eventually, you see more good days than bad ones. So when we're following the plan, but we're not seeing immediate results, then we might not be very consistent at doing the work, and of course that will make solving anxiety take a lot longer. Do you follow the steps properly? And this is really important. If you work with a professional who designs a behavior modification plan tailored to you and to your dog, it's important that you get support afterwards. It's not enough for somebody to say, do this and do that, because very often what people say gets interpreted by us in a different way. And it's very important that you understand exactly what you're supposed to be doing. And in that sense, it's important that you have support to make sure that if you start making mistakes, the professional will tell you, no, don't do that, rather go this way or go that way. So that's important, like following the steps properly. Okay. And also try not to change the strategy, which is another thing that happens when we don't see immediate results. We go on when we think, oh, that's not working. Like 3 days later, we don't see results, and then we change, and then somebody tells us something else. And then we get all this contradictory information, and we try this one thing and that one thing. And so eventually it all adds confusion. You will no longer be following a step-by-step structured plan. So that is also going to slow down the healing process. And then finally, is this the first time your dog has separation anxiety, or have they had it before? The one thing about separation anxiety is that it needs to be properly solved the first time around, because there are studies that show that when separation anxiety isn't properly solved, then further down the line, it will appear again. And each relapse tends to be more severe than the previous one, or than the first time that your dog had separation anxiety. So if this is the first time they have it, then it may take less time. If it's like the second, third, or fourth relapse, then it's going to take longer. So once again, I wish I could have given you a very concrete, specific time frame, but I can't. It wouldn't be ethical of me to do so. So the only thing I can encourage you to do is to just, like, one day at a time. Today, I'm going to do this. I'm going to stick to the plan. And today, I've noticed my dog is a little bit better. Maybe he didn't bark as much. Maybe he didn't destroy as much. Doesn't matter. Then the next day, okay, today I'm doing the work. And forget about long term or how long it takes. Just focus on one day at a time, which is the best way to set you up for success. I hope you enjoyed this video. And if you'd like to know more about separation anxiety, just go down to the bottom to the description, where you'll get free access to a training video. Take care.